Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover Podcast presented by the Field of 68. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined as always by Charles Branch and Michael Harper. Guys, it is officially tournament season. I know last episode we turned the page to March, but now we're into the winner go home games, that being the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament, which Alabama is securely in the NCAA tournament. Can't say the same for some teams across the state, but um, excited to talk about the SEC tournament, where Alabama secured a double bye. They're the two seed. They don't have to play till Friday. So it's quite the nice enjoyment to be able to sit here this Thursday when we're recording this, but sit here Wednesday, Thursday, and not have to worry about your team playing. Um, Before we get into what what Alabama has to do for the SEC tournament, let's just give your guys' general thoughts on the season, regular season as a whole, and then maybe some thoughts on how some of the games so far in the SEC tournament have played out.
You can
Not
go
all
ahead,
at
Charles.
once.
More the season more complete than what I would have said, 3, 4 weeks ago about feeling incomplete with just all the injuries. And I still think there will be some what ifs as it relates to this season. The top one being what if Charles Bediako's appeal had gotten approved. I think the second one behind that is what if Keaton Bristow had actually played, and then followed then by what if Taylor Bowen had been healthy throughout the entire year? Because I think people forget, and even though the season has gone by fast, it also feels like it's been a long time since the game against St. John's in Madison Square Garden. But Taylor Bowen was a huge component of that win late in the game, playing the five role. And if people remember, St. John's is a big team. They've turned it around. They ended up winning the Big East this year. Zuby Ejiofor was named Player of the Year of the Big East. And he's a big guy. And Taylor Bowen was playing the five at that time in the game late. Aiden Sherrill was not the Aiden Sherrill that we've now seen through conference play. And just having somebody like Taylor Bowen with the emergence of Amari Allen, with the rest of the team getting healthy, I think really would have been fun to watch. I mean, when the record had been much more different, I think we go back and we look at the game against Texas as really being the one that got away, or the game that should have been won. Tennessee, Aiden Holloway, and Amari Allen being out again, injuries, if they're healthy, kind of like we saw a couple weeks ago, I think we win that game. So instead of being 13-5, you're 15-3. Who knows really what would have happened in the game against Florida? Um, but I think the season overall it's been a really good season for Alabama. I've told y'all multiple times I really enjoy watching this team play, and I have really enjoyed watching this team play. They've obviously had their bumps along the road, but in continuing to build this program and see this program continue to be one of the top basketball programs in the country, I think this team has already achieved that. They're going to make the NCAA tournament again, like Christian said. And it's not limping into the NCAA tournament. Since Nate Oates has been in Alabama, Alabama has firmly been in the NCAA tournament. And really, since maybe the second year, where we ended up being a two seed in the NCAA tournament, you have felt really good about Alabama being in the big dance since conference play, since it turned the page to conference play. So it's been a really good year, and hopefully from an SEC standpoint, have a good showing in Nashville, bring back some Nashville Nate magic, and really get after some more conference opponents and see ourselves with an opportunity to win a championship on Sunday.
Overall, I think it's been a successful season. Ups and downs like every basketball season. But if you look at what this basketball team brought back, compared to what they were bringing back a year ago, I really believe, well, and then you combine that with all the injuries. I firmly believe this has been one of Nate Oates' best coaching jobs. um to like you brought up, Charles, with all of the injuries, with the Charles Bediako situation, um you know him being thrust in the lineup and the stretch of teams that Alabama had to play. while he was playing, and then um, you know, Taylor Bobo and Keaton Bristow having to play Tennessee without Amari Allen and Aiden Holloway the first time. Um, to me, just this was a really good job of him getting um, the team to buy in. If you kind of look, I think one of the best examples of a buy in is Jalil Bethia, right? If you look at the attitude that Jalil Bathia's had, he went from, you know, a 5-star prospect going to Miami to, transfer that was expecting to do really, really big things to getting injured in the summer and having to work his way back in. And then going from, not even a big piece off the bench, just, playing sparingly and playing in mop up duty, to now he's coming in and getting some really important minutes and has had a great attitude about it. And even um, for, him to even be mentioned by Nate Oates in the press conferences with like his putback rebound against Auburn, Oates saying that was his favorite moment in the game, so to me, that's the example of the buy-in that this team has. And for all of the talk that, you hear from, some of our fan base, other fan bases about the team not being fun to watch because of the defense and rebounding. Yes, there are some shortcomings with the rebounding. There are some shortcomings with on the ball defense. The on the ball defense is not as bad as what people make it out to be. Now, the rebounding is. I still feel like that's something that can be improved upon in the tournament. But with that said, overall successful season, 13-5 in SEC play, finished 23-8. Was that correct? Finished 23-8 regular season. It's really hard to complain when you just look. If you look a decade ago and see where Alabama basketball was at that time, we really are like we have people complaining about a two, finished in a 2 seed in the SEC, which I understand that's the standard that Nate Oates has raised. And I think he is fine with that, with people complaining, because he knows that that's being talked about and that's where we are. And that's the standard he wants. So it's just when you look back on, Alabama basketball a decade ago to where we are now, it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the one to say you talk about this being Nate's best coaching job. I mean, I had conversations, with people, and I was of the opinion when Alabama was 5-4 in the SEC that arguably I would have said this is probably Nate's worst coaching job. Um, and I know that that has to do with injuries and things of that nature, but I felt at the time a lot of the in-game coaching or late game coaching, it was really not where or up to par to where Nate has been in the past. But I feel like it's turned around. And I feel like the team has gotten comfortable. I think Nate's done a really good job of shortening the rotation, not um not trying to play 10 guys, but is comfortable playing 8, and then and leaving it as it is. I also think that the fact that Alabama's finally been able to get healthy and finally gotten some semblance of some type of rotation is beneficial to the players. You're not constantly trying to figure out who you're playing or who you're playing with in a starting rotation or in a backup rotation, where it's changing and the continuity is not there. I will say for this team, I said that they would go 15-3, I think, in the SEC, and I think that Alabama could have gone 15-3. I also think Alabama could have gone 11-7 in conference play, and in the fact that they go 13-5, they won five. I think it was what five games where they came back down double digits in the SEC play. I will say that's a little bit of concerning that there were 5 games where you're down double digits, but it's a very positive trend to see that Alabama is able to fight back and able to weather the storm and win these types of games, especially when it comes to March. But to finish 23-8, finish as the 2 seed in the SEC, You can't really complain much. I know that there's been a lot of conversation off topic from, just the season as a whole about NIL and about recruiting and all of these things. Let me just say that, like you said, Michael, if 10 years ago you would have told us that we would have a top five recruiting class with three top 30 recruits, right? Like we would be ecstatic. Um, I understand some fans are very disgruntled about losing Caleb Holt. I get it. He was an Alabama kid, but I am of the opinion, regardless of circumstance, that he wasn't going to come to Alabama. Um, that's just the way it was. But um, yeah, I really don't understand this narrative of being frustrated with Nate about the team, being frustrated about the athletic department, about um, about recruiting or money or whatever it may be, right? When you're 23-8, you have a chance to win 25 games. I think it's for the fourth or fifth straight year, which is something that's never been done at Alabama, mind you. Um, and we're concerned about not, some finishing 23-8 in the SEC. I'm not entirely sure why that's a narrative, but overall I would grade this season like a massive success, genuinely a massive success based off of the injuries that we've dealt with, the um, just the overall lack of continuity and roster turnover. Um, and I mean, I'm excited about tournament play. Like I've always said, Alabama's tough to play against on short rest. Um, Alabama has only lost one time in the what is it like the second game of a weekend in the NCAA tournament or SEC tournament. So hopefully we get Nashville Nate back. Let's talk about the
Before we transition,
yeah
'cause you were hitting on something just about maybe frustrations, and I'm actually going
yeah
to allow both of y'all to be my Alabama basketball therapist. I don't think I'm as crazy as some people out there, but I'm sitting there watching the game against Auburn, and we're dominating Auburn. We're dominating them on the offensive side, the defensive side, rebounding. Like it was awesome to watch. And then you get to the end of the game in the finals 96-84, and you give up 53 points in the second half. And I'm not trying to be so picky as far as like margin of victory. Um, and I get it that with how badly we were beating Auburn, there was definitely the opportunities to have some lulls in there. And this has been a team that has had stretches where for 5 minutes it's just maybe not necessarily allowing teams to get back in the game, but we've seen it against Arkansas, seen it against Tennessee, where you just mentioned getting down double digits. They've obviously got the ability to come back and have done it 5 times. But where am I just so off base for being frustrated? I'm not frustrated that we won. It's just like not being able to fully enjoy the victory, which is crazy. I mean, everything you just said, y'all both said about, a decade ago and where this program is and all that. But it's just like I want to see us just dominate from start to finish. I want us to see us play a full 40 minutes of basketball and really run somebody out of the gym. And I think that's really, I do feel like it's really greedy of me to say that, but that's where I feel like some of that frustration sometimes percolates with other people that maybe don't know how to handle it well and then just want to blow up the whole system.
yeah. I mean, I'm not a coach, so I'll go first, and then Michael, obviously, you can take the reins on maybe what the like mentality side of it. But I will say this: one, every team in the SEC is a talented team, right? You're talking about the SEC potentially getting 11 teams into the tournament out of 16. Um, every coach in the SEC, most every coach in the SEC is a good coach. Um, I think it's unrealistic to expect the team not to make a run, especially when they're down. They're going to try to fight harder. I also think it's unrealistic to expect a team of teenagers, right, or hopefully teenagers, to stay locked in for 40 minutes when you're beating a team by 20, right? Um, I do understand the frustration, and I do understand that like or what was it, 3 years ago we could beat teams by 40 points, and that was just a given on a. But like, I think the difference in 3 years ago and the and now is you don't have like the talent discrepancy in the SEC 3 years ago was much greater than it is right now. And you have guys on a team like a Josh Hubbard, for example. Mississippi State's a terrible team, but Josh Hubbard can give you 46 points in a given night and keep a team alive and win a game by himself. Darius Acuff can give you 50 points in a night, and you're going into double overtime against Arkansas with a 7-man rotation. Like, it happens across the league where sometimes that's the nature of the talent in the SEC. And I think as Alabama fans, it's unrealistic to expect a team not to be able to adjust and not be able to make a run. And that's what's happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, Michael, before you go, I do just want to say from our previous sessions, I do replay in my head what you've said in the past. Other teams are allowed to be good. Other teams are allowed to make shots. I haven't totally forgotten that. I keep trying to think about it, but I'll let you go.
Personally, I just think, Auburn not losing by, with the 28 point, Alabama had a 28-point lead and Auburn cut it and ended up only losing by 12, just goes to show you how good of a coach that Stephen Pearl is, and that Auburn should extend him, and they really just need to keep him around for, as long as possible. So, I mean, wouldn't you guys agree with that?
100%. He looked pretty sharp over there in a jacket too.
So,
And on the
um,
stool versus Mississippi State, I really like the stool touch.
yeah. But from a mindset standpoint, I agree. Like, and even Nate Oates said it at the end of the or at his press conference right after the game, that he would like to see see the team more locked in even after you built the 28-point lead. You could see a relax. However, I will say this: even though it got down to 12, I mean, it was still around 18 to 20, you know, at the under 4, and then you had some, you did have some bench guys come in, and it really looked like Auburn was trying to, make it less, make that defeat less bad on the scoreboard, so they were still fighting for their tournament lives, So um, I do actually, as much as I don't want to, I will give Auburn a little bit of credit for not throwing in the towel, because they could have just, packed it in and, said, hey, we're done. It's not our night. And they didn't. But we need to be a little more locked in on the defensive end when you get a lead like that. If you want to do what, like Christian said, what you would see 3 years ago, where you'd have Brandon Miller being able to just take over and still score, 30 plus points. One thing that is different about this team and that team is, even if the on ball defense from the guards slacked off a little bit, you still had a Noah Clowney and Charles Bediako, to protect the rim, and even Brandon Miller at 6'9" on the wing. So, I mean, it was a little easier, not easier. I mean, we were just a lot better defensive team. And it's a lot easier to get stops, when you're that good of a defensive team. So I think that has a little bit to do with it too. You've got, like Christian said, you've got some really good offensive players, and, going against some of our guys that are just not great defensive players. And so when you slack off a little bit, or when you lose your intensity, some really good offensive players, which Auburn does have some good offensive players, you can see a team go on runs like that. So when you get in the tournament, it's just you're hoping to maintain that intensity, which I do kind of expect to happen.
And I think some of that's coming off of the game against Georgia, which we may see tomorrow night as well. and just what they did on the offensive side. And I think I give more credit to Georgia that they made some very difficult shots and they had some guys get in a rhythm. But as Nate Oates said after that game, how many times have we given somebody a career game that has just gone off against us? And there's obviously something that couple times it's coincidence. Now it's becoming an unfortunate pattern. And I think some of that is just how we may attack teams early on and maybe not get into them as much early on. That was not the case Saturday night. Talking about Auburn fighting back, I know this was very early in the game. It's probably a 4-point game at the first media timeout, but they already looked defeated that early in the game. And like you said, it was around 18 points at the 4-minute mark. I mean, the game was basically over at the first TV timeout in the second half. And it was probably even more over before then, but you knew they weren't coming back anymore in the second half because we did start well and approached the second half pretty well. So that's my gripe from a victory for your third straight victory against Auburn in the IBOB, which real quick on that too, like the basketball rim is made of iron. So why are we not calling it like the Iron Rim or something like that? Why are we still going to the Iron Bowl basketball?
Look, we coined the phrase iBob to make it, the reason why we did it. I'll tell you the actual lore behind it. So Hunter Johnson, you went on Twitter, would mess with Cole Kublik because Cole Kublik is of the mindset that the Iron Bowl was only football. And so every time that, Cole would talk about basketball, Hunter and, the rest of Alabama Twitter would go into Cole Kublik's and say, "Oh, this is the Iron Bowl of basketball," to mess with him. And now I was surprised that like now the official account is calling it the iBob. So you can't really change it now, but it was a joke to mess with the people that were saying that the Iron Bowl was only for football.
And it's been picked up, it's been picked up nationally.
Yeah.
You see ESPN, SEC Network calling it the Iron Bowl of basketball. So it's really gotten some steam. So and IBOB just kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to call it, I guess as long as we keep winning, I won't be upset about it.
And I believe that makes Nate Oates 9-5 versus Auburn.
Versus the Pearls.
Yeah. So I'm okay. We can call it whatever we want if Nate Oates is going to continue dominating the series.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the SEC tournament for Alabama. They will face either Ole Miss, who upset Texas, or Georgia in their first game tomorrow or today, depending on when I get the podcast out. And then you additionally have on the same side of the bracket, you have A&M, Arkansas, or Oklahoma as a potential semifinal matchup on Saturday if Alabama does in fact beat Ole Miss or Georgia. So let's talk about the first round game, or I guess it would be third round game. What matchup do you want? I think I know the answer. And just give your thoughts on the Georgia and Ole Miss teams.
I think I would want Ole Miss because it'd be their third game in 3 days. We were all geniuses and definitely picked Ole Miss to beat Texas, so no need to go back on X and look on how we did there.
Because we just picked all the favorites, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Even in a game against Ole Miss, who would be playing for their season. I mean, to keep their season going, they're going to have to find a way to win the SEC tournament. I would expect it to be a very physical game. I would expect it to be not necessarily low scoring, but maybe grind it out a little bit more than, of course, what it would be against Georgia. It feels like it's going to be a significant contrast between styles depending on which that games go. So I do think I'd personally like to see Ole Miss. If we do see Georgia, I expect Alabama to be very locked in from the start based on how that game went last week. It would be nice to see a really good defensive effort and lock down some of these Georgia players that we didn't do such a great job the first time around. It'd be nice to see us do a better job on the glass as well against Georgia. And then if you get to semifinal Saturday, whether it's Oklahoma, Arkansas, or Texas A&M, I expect a very physical game. I expect a very intense game. I personally did not see Arkansas beating. I had Texas A&M winning tonight. We'll see if that happens. But then I also had Texas A&M beating Arkansas. And it's not a slight on Arkansas's team. John Calipari teams have just really struggled in the SEC tournament recently. Darius Acuff with the accolades of winning SEC Player of the Year just gives me the vibe that they could be surprised in their first game and go home early. So, to your original question, I'd like to see Ole Miss. I feel comfortable with whoever we're playing on Friday night, and then whoever you play Saturday. I expect that. I do expect that to be an intense game before you would eventually, in my expectation, play Florida on Sunday for the championship.
So I'm gonna give a little shout out to my high school basketball coach. Coach Miller. He told us a long time ago back in high school when we were waiting to see who our opponent would be in any kind of tournament. He would always tell us not to root for one team or another, and not to wish to play one team or the other. So I'm going to follow that advice and just kind of sit back and see who we play. But I think either game would give you a good opportunity. One, if it's Georgia, which is who I expect it to be, it gives you an opportunity to, for some payback from the previous game and an opportunity to improve against them defensively, and to prepare you for what could potentially be a high scoring game in the next game too, if you do win that and Arkansas beats Oklahoma. If it's Ole Miss, it gives you a chance to play a physical basketball game. And it also could give you, playing a team in your first game on their third game in 3 days. Honestly, it's going to be an intriguing matchup either way. And I'm fine with either one. But there is a part of me that kind of wants some revenge on Georgia. And then if you get to Saturday, the Oklahoma-Arkansas game, that's one that, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, or, Arkansas, it could be either one. The way Oklahoma's playing, I picked Oklahoma to make it to Saturday in the tournament. I think they're playing really, really good basketball right now. I think Porter Moser's done a really good job of not having his team pack it in and quit. I think they're making high effort plays, rebounding the basketball, scoring. That's kind of my upset pick. It's kind of my Cinderella to make it to Saturday. But whatever team it is, if Alabama were to make it to Saturday, Oklahoma, A&M, Arkansas, they all present different challenges, and all three of those challenges, though, there's some high-level scorers on every team.
All three would also have a former Alabama player on their roster.
They would. It would be to me that the Arkansas, if it's Arkansas and Alabama, that game's already been touted by ESPN, other social media sites as the game of the year in college basketball. So you would get a rematch of that game of the year, which would be obviously fun and great TV. And then if it's Texas A&M, you have the Bucky McMillan, you have the Rylan Griffin angle. You also have what was an entertaining game last time. And then if it's Oklahoma, it was, that was a game that I really feel like Alabama was lucky to escape Norman with a win. That was another game that Alabama got down by double digits and came back. So I think all of these games, that are potential opponents for Alabama, there is something there that you can pick out that, there's a reason that you'd like to play each one of those teams.
Going back to Georgia and Ole Miss, game against Ole Miss, 45 3-point attempts. Georgia, I think it was 42. And we've talked at times maybe shooting three a little bit more or shooting it more than what we would like to see. I think a big reason why we came back against Arkansas, Tennessee was getting to the rim. Thought we made a pretty good effort to get to the rim against Auburn early on. We only got 27 threes up against that game. Is that something y'all, regardless of who we play, Georgia or Ole Miss, would y'all like to see us really attack the rim and maybe keep that number around 30, 35 from the 3-point line? I mean, you're going to take what they give you, but I'd like to see us continue to attack the rim and get in the paint.
To me, it's going to depend on who we play, honestly, because if you're playing Ole Miss, like with the defensive style that Chris Beard plays a no middle defense, and so they are actively trying to keep everything out of the paint and force you sideline, and force you baseline. So, honestly, with Ole Miss, I'm perfectly fine with you taking a huge number of threes, even more than what we would normally take, because that's what they're going to give us. And if they are going to give us those kind of looks, I'm perfectly fine with Aden Holloway shooting a three every time he touches the ball. Perfectly fine with LeBaron getting those kind of looks, the looks that we got. So if it's Ole Miss, I'm fine with it. With Georgia, again, you're going to take what the defense gives you, but I would like to see us actively continue to attack the rim like we did against Auburn. And I think you saw that, with the guards that we have, if you try to take it away and you don't have the if you don't have the physicality of a Tennessee or a Florida, you can look from recent games like Auburn, or you can go all the way back to November with St. John's, where it was just a relentless attacking of the rim. And so, I think that's going to be it's like always, like Nate Oates' offense always do, is your first recipe for success.
Yeah, the reason why I think Alabama's turned it around, I guess turn it around is relative this season, like going from 5-4 to 13-5 in the SEC. I think it's because of the way that they've attacked the rim and they're not settling for shots. Then the games that Alabama has either had struggle wins or have lost, you don't see them attacking the rim as much. And I think that that's how this offense gets initiated, especially with the elite finishing at the rim that you see from LeBaron Philon and Aden Holloway that we're getting right now. And I think even to an extent, Amari Allen's done a pretty good job at finishing at the rim. And then a surprising person is Latrell Wrightsell. He's been attacking the rim the last half of the season, and I really feel like it opens up some of the shooting lanes for Alabama. So regardless of the opponent, I want Alabama to continue to attack the paint, attack the rim, and even if it's against Florida, I know that Florida has a size advantage, and they have Chinulu and Haw and I think Han Logden as well. Like they have those three guys, and I know that that's like a scary thing, but forcing a defense to collapse to the paint allows open shots from the three, which is ultimately what Alabama wants. It also draws fouls, which Alabama has been a pretty good free throw shooting team. So continue to attack the paint, continue to attack the rim. I think this is the key to success for this Alabama team.
Well, and if you look at if we are fortunate enough to make it to Sunday and Florida is the opponent, I think with the way Florida hasn't changed the way they play, us defensively. They're going to try to make us they're going to try to run us off the line. Excuse me. They're going to try to run us off the line. They are going to switch 1 through 5. They're going to switch every ball screen and make you try to attack one-on-one and play one-on-one basketball. And when Ruben Chinulu switches off of LeBaron Philon or Aiden Holloway, and he is still able to guard you one-on-one, it makes it tough. So, like, what you've got to what you kind of have to hope for is, like you said, when you get those switches, you still attack relentlessly, and you kind of hope you're getting an officiating crew that wants to be seen and wants to actually call it tight. So that would be one of those, like, if we are fortunate enough to make it to Sunday and make it to the SEC championship game, that's one where it would not bother me to see a lot of whistles in that game, because of how physical Florida's bigs do play, and they don't play they play physical with a different style of Tennessee. So that's kind of the difference. So I agree with you, Christian. We've got to continue to attack the paint, and even against Florida, and hopefully you get some of their guys in some foul trouble.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues that Alabama has with Florida is they allow Florida's size to intimidate them, and that allows Florida to dictate how Alabama's going to play their offense. Where we know Nate Oates is stubborn, and we know he wants to play a stubborn style of basketball, but it feels like when you go up against the Floridas, the Tennessees of the world, the Purdue's, Alabama or Nate, and it's not Nate, it's just the nature of how Florida and those teams want to impose their will on on teams. It feels like Alabama gets out of what makes Alabama Alabama, and I think just being a stubborn offense, and regardless if it doesn't work, like, at least try, right? At least continue to try to do the things that you predicate your offensive system off of. And I feel like a lot of the times that in those games like that we get away from that.
Well, if you look at the kind of the transformation of this basketball team from when the last time that Alabama played Florida to now, it really is a completely different team. I mean, obviously it's different in the fact that Charles Bediako is no longer on the team as well, or no longer playing. But it's like you guys have said, it's a getting to the rim team, and even without a ball screen. I mean, we're still a ball screen offense, ball screen, dribble drive offense. But we're getting a lot of one-on-one actions with LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wright's attacking on closeout. So I do think if this Alabama team does make it to Sunday, I'm not predicting a win over Florida. Like, if you look at my bracket, I think most of us everyone is predicting.
We all pick Florida.
We're all picking a Florida win just because Florida's playing a different brand of basketball than everybody else is right now. And that's in the country, not in the SEC. But I think you will see a different game. And I think you'll see a little bit different of a game plan too, which will be more aggressive and not, again, relentless attacking, just to kind of force the issue rather than, and I think the way you put it, Christian, there has been a little bit of an intimidation factor with the guards, when they switch instead of, when they switched and you got, Chinulu or Condon, and you would want the guards attacking the bigs. The guards, instead of looking to get downhill to finish at the rim, they would look to get downhill to, shoot a step back instead of forcing the issue. And I think you will see that differently if that's the matchup on Sunday.
I think in both the game against Florida and potentially against Arkansas, there are going to be moments in that game where our opponent makes a run. And it could be very early on in a tightly contested game, like we saw against Florida, when we played there, like we saw against Arkansas, when they took it out to 37-23. I'm not going to hammer as much on Nate Oates as far as taking a timeout, because we know that's not going to happen. But what I think it is important is the players to understand that, yes, there is a system about, we want to get threes and we want to get clean looks and we want to play fast. But you've got to be able to have some game awareness and some game feel. And I think it goes to taking it to the rim too, of what is the shot that we need at this moment to, or without slowing it down from a timeout, can we slow the momentum down by making a basket or by getting a defensive stop? There's been times against Florida where the game has gotten out of hand because we've just kind of played into it. And I think we kind of did that against Georgia too. Like Georgia plays a different type of fast pace where I felt they were really sloppy and we just kind of played into that sloppiness at times where it's, games getting away from you a little bit. Can you play fast, but can you play under control? And can you take the right shot in that moment? That it's a three-pointer coming from a Latrell Wrightsell or an Aiden Holloway, not a three-pointer that's coming from, a London Jemison or Taylor Bowen. I actually think London Jemison's a really good shooter. I think we all would, he's been playing well throughout the years. He's grown, but what's the right shot in that moment? And I think there's going to be moments like that on Saturday and Sunday, should we get there. And how we treat those moments and can come out of those moments is going to tell a lot on if we're victorious or not.
Yeah, I think for Alabama, getting to Sunday should be your goal at minimum. I think you finish top two in the league. You should be playing for a championship on Sunday. So if you don't, ultimately it's not the end of the world. Like it's whatever. This isn't the big one, but I think Alabama gaining the confidence, and especially against like a Florida team, if you could get to Sunday and you're playing Florida and you can somehow find a way to beat Florida, you think about the confidence level of Alabama going into the NCAA tournament. And you talk about getting hot, playing, peaking at the right time. Like I feel like this is the tournament and the way that it's set up, the way that Alabama, you're playing Georgia, you're playing either Georgia or Ole Miss, you're playing A&M, Oklahoma or Arkansas, all teams that you beat before outside of obviously Georgia. But I think if Alabama plays them again, different circumstances coming off that Tennessee game, very emotional game for Alabama, short rest, you go into, Athens and it's a difficult game for you. But like the path to Sunday for Alabama I think is very favorable. Um, and I think if you could somehow find a way to beat Florida and obviously win the SEC tournament, like the confidence levels for Alabama and Alabama probably be a 3 seed, like pretty comfortably a 3 seed. If you beat Florida, I would be I'd be very positive on the outlook of Alabama's chances going into the
I,
NCAA
I,
tournament.
I still I still think if you get to Sunday, then like I feel like if Alabama gets to Sunday, they're going to be a 3 seed,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens with some of the other ones in front of us. Just when you finally have that complete body of work and you take into all of our metrics, I really believe that we'll be a 3 seed if we make it to Sunday. However, I think we've seen in the past, regardless of what happens in that game on Sunday, to the committee, I don't think it matters. And this is for another day, but I've felt like over the last couple of years that the SEC needs to move the tournament back to where it's finishing on a Saturday to maybe help their champion a little bit. But that's for an off season discussion. But making it to Sunday, playing for a championship is what ultimately your goal is. And if you look at if you look at last year, really, if you look at the last 3 seasons, the Alabama basketball has played for some kind of championship each year. Last season, it was the regional championship in the Elite Eight, and in the Players Era tournament. But if you're just talking postseason, played for a regional championship in the Elite Eight. The season before, played for a regional championship in the Elite Eight and won, making it to the Final Four. The year before that, you made it to the SEC championship game and won it. Ultimately, you fell short, in the NCAA tournament. But ultimately, as a program, that's your goal every year to play for some type of championship. And that would, like you said, that would be a big step just, from a confidence standpoint.
I'll go out on a limb and say if we make it to Sunday, we are a 3 seed. If we win the championship, there's no doubt we're a 3 seed. I'm currently trying to see if there's a path to be the last 2 seed. At that point, it doesn't really matter. I'm a little skeptical of Michigan State. I still think that 2 seed could be available to somebody if they bow out early in the Big Ten tournament. But three seed in this NCAA tournament is going to be a pretty solid position for Alabama.
I think the reason I immediately say no to the 2 seed is we've seen in bracketing where games on Sunday don't matter.
Right.
Um, and so I think Alabama's position is going to be set by Saturday. Um, I will say, if you're Alabama, you can't afford to lose the game tomorrow as far as seeding purposes. I don't think, and the reason why I say that is the path of a 4 seed is significantly harder than a path of a 3 seed. And if Alabama loses, um, if Alabama loses the game tomorrow, in all likelihood, Alabama's going to be a 4 seed. And I think just favorable purposes, like I think the 6 line is a lot more favorable for an Alabama than a 5 line, which is what Alabama would be playing. Is that the Sweet 16 matchup or is that the
That would be the second round matchup.
second
So
round
Sweet
matchup?
16, you're playing a 1 seed. If you're the 4, if you're a 4 seed, you're playing a 1 seed in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. So you want to be a 3 seed. It's kind of where I'm at. And you also get favorability as far as like site locations. I think the sites Alabama would either be if as I've seen it, Alabama would be a 4 seed playing in Tampa or a 3 seed playing in Greenville, which I would like to play in Greenville because that's only an hour and a half away from me. So, um, but yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts. Um, all right. Anything else, guys? Anything I missed? As far as our schedule, we are going to have a bracket space like we've done, I think the last like 2 or 3 years. We'll do that on Sunday. I think the bracket comes out at 6 p.m. Eastern, so 5 p.m. Central. So we'll probably start that space at 4 p.m. Central time. So an hour before the bracket reveal, and then do the whole bracket reveal live, like we've done the past few years. So we'd love for you guys to join us on that. We have Blue Collar Podcasts with Emily Smar and Michael Southern. I don't know if they're doing an SEC tournament like preview or whatever. They'll probably do something with the NCAA tournament. And then we will be recording the NCAA tournament first weekend podcast on Monday. Um, and so we'll break down Alabama's path on the first weekend, just talk about the bracket in general, and things of that nature. So that expect that one to be a little bit longer than this one right now. And then we have Weekly Joe. We just released that episode previewing the SEC slate. They're playing this weekend. I think it's Kentucky that they're playing against. But other than that, if I haven't missed anything, I think we're good to sign off. All right. Sounds good. We'll talk again soon and roll tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.